Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, going solo today because we have some crazy breaking news, an absolute bombshell that was dropped on Major League Baseball, specifically the Dodgers today. That is Trevor Bauer, who has been placed on administrative leave for almost a year. We're going to get to the timeline here in just a moment. Has been suspended for 2 years, 324 games by Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred. That announcement was made today. Ken Rosenthal, John Heyman, among others, to break that news. But again, Trevor Bauer of the Los Angeles Dodgers has been issued a 2-year, 324-game suspension starting immediately. Now, all indications from Bauer himself, who has already responded on social media, are that he will appeal, and that who knows how long of a process this will be. Again, he has been on administrative leave. I imagine he will not be able to play as long as the appeal is in process. But absolute crazy stuff for the Dodgers. I see a bunch of folks joining us. We are going live today, so if you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, you can join us, chime in with your thoughts. We're going to get to all of it, but I see some people already not happy with the decision. 2 years, WTF, Ryan says. BS and fully expanded out BS all over the place. Iggy says, screw the MLB commissioner. Wow, agree, wow. All sorts of stuff. Time served is a question Raymond asks, and the answer is no. He's been on the administrative leave, which means he has been getting paid. None of that will count as time served, so it will be 2 years starting today. Now, let's go backwards real quick. We'll get into questions and where we go from here in just a moment, but let's get into the timeline of stuff here. So, Trevor Bauer has been placed on administrative leave, was placed on administrative leave on July 2nd of 2021. That was while an internal investigation was opened into sexual assault allegations that had been made against him. Those allegations, if you go backwards, were related to events that took place in April and May of 2021. On June 30th is when the Pasadena Police Department confirmed that he was under investigation for assault. There was a female that has accused him of a number of things. Many of you, if you're watching this, have heard the story, have seen the pictures, etc. May 16th is when she went to the emergency room. That was when those pictures came. So just to give you a timeline. But again, he has been placed on administrative leave dating back to July 2nd, 2021. So that was just a few days after it was announced he was under investigation. And that was an agreement. Administrative leave, he was being paid for that time. But that was an agreement between Major League Baseball and the Players Association for him to be placed on administrative leave. Of course, that extended through the second half of last season, extended into the beginning of this season. That has been extended a number of times. Again, it has to be said with an agreement between the Players Association and Major League Baseball together coming to that decision. But Bauer, obviously, over the last few weeks has become increasingly agitated. No charges were ever formally filed against Trevor Bauer by the district attorney. There are civil suits ongoing in both directions. Bauer has countersued, and it's worth pointing out, I know it's not necessarily a popular thing, but it's worth pointing out that just because charges aren't filed, the way our system is set up does not necessarily mean you are innocent. It just does not mean that you can be proven guilty. Major League Baseball does not have to respond to actual charges, to actual convictions. Major League Baseball did their own investigation. This was the decision. Now, the shocking part to me, and I'd love to get some thoughts from some folks who are joining in, the shocking part is the length, 2 years. We had heard 1 year for a while. I kept saying on this show, I actually thought that number was going down and down and down the more time that went on. But for this to be a 2-year suspension, again, if you're just joining us, that 2-year suspension begins today, so we'll extend all the way into the 2024 season, well beyond when his contract with the Dodgers will be up. He will not be paid for that time period, so from a cap perspective, the Dodgers will not be charged for the time that Trevor Bauer is suspended, but a 324-game suspension handed down. Again, Trevor Bauer has said that he intends to appeal. He vehemently argues on behalf of himself that he's innocent, that these charges are bogus, and so that's where we're at. So let's get into some questions here. If you're in the chat, if you're on YouTube, if you're joining us via Facebook, wherever it might be, please let us know. I mean, I'd love to get your thoughts. We're going to get into in a little bit what this means for the Dodgers. I touched on a little bit the cap space stuff. I started getting some text messages about Trey Turner almost immediately, but let's get into this. Let's see. Let's get into this real quick and get some comments here. Lots of people that are sympathetic to Trevor Bauer. I know this is a controversial issue. It's a sensitive issue, and it's complicated too because I think in a situation where we don't have all the information, we haven't done the investigation, Major League Baseball has, and a situation in which the lines between assault and not assault have become so blurred. And then on top of that, how do you assess and sort of place a fair punishment on top of this? I think that's where most people are struggling here. Gizmo says Major League Baseball doesn't like the Dodgers or the fans. Oscar says Major League Baseball thinks they are stiffer than the law. That's a joke. River asks, who should we go after now? Somebody asked, so is he a free agent after suspension? Sign Trey Turner. Michael Malloy says that as well. Screw Bauer. These are the types of things that I think Dodger fans are wrestling with. We've been obviously on this channel, on this show for a long time, sort of navigating this one, and that's kind of the sense of what I've been getting. You have some people that thinks it's absolutely ridiculous that Trevor Bauer would be suspended at all, that he wasn't pitching. You have other people saying, I hope he never pitches for the Dodgers again. Well, if that's the case, if you're in I hope he never pitches for the Dodgers again, good news for you, because that appears to be the world that we're heading in right now. Like a 2-year suspension, of course, assuming he is not the appeal is not successful, would put him as not. I mean, his contract with the Dodgers runs through 2023. It was a player option in 2023. Of course, many people expected him to pick that up for $32 million, but this would extend basically until this point. And remember, we started the season about a week late, so a quarter of the way through the 2024 season is when this suspension would expire. Trevor Bauer would be 33 years old at that point. But from the Dodgers' perspective, that money is now off the cap. So the base salary that he was due, the luxury tax salary, was $34 million for this year. It would have been $34 million for next year as well. If you want to look at the positives for the Dodgers, regardless, setting aside Bauer as an individual and everything, that money is now freed up. People are asking, does this mean Trey Turner could be re-signed? I mean, it definitely opens them up to have some more money next year, because $34 million just came off of their books for a guy that, if we're being honest, might not have pitched for them anyways, based on whatever you think about Trevor Bauer. Nomo asking, how can you talk about how that affects the Dodgers payroll? That's the answer. So $34 million, prorated, so let's say like $27 million that he had left sort of from here on out for the rest of this season would come off of the Dodgers luxury tax number, that the competitive balance threshold, that kind of a thing. So that would come off. So I wouldn't necessarily expect that to have a huge impact on the Dodgers for this season. Of course, maybe that frees them up to go make a move at the trade deadline. Maybe there's a bigger salary that they can bring back at that point. But I think the bigger thing is for next season. You have a guy like Trey Turner who's going to be up for free agency. We could argue about how Trey Turner has played in a small sample size this season, but now all of a sudden you've got $34 million less on your payroll for next season. So there you go. Little City Living, Deshaun Watson, 20-plus accusations of sexual assault. Trevor Bauer has one. Look, I mean, again, regardless of what you think about this, I think that's more of an indictment on the NFL than it would be on Major League Baseball, than it would be on the Dodgers or Trevor Bauer. But I can understand sort of the frustration. I would personally, whether or not you think the NFL got that right or whether or not you think Major League Baseball got that right, would be sort of a question for you. Looking at payroll figures, so this year the Dodgers' total payroll allocation, this is according to Spot Track, is about $290.5 million. So you can subtract, like I said, I haven't done the quick math, but let's say somewhere between $27 to $29 million is my guess off of that. But next year the Dodgers have just about $156 million on the books. Trevor Bauer was set to be the single largest expenditure on that. David Price comes off of the books, so that's about $67 million coming off the books. Obviously, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, those guys' numbers are $27 and $25 million for next year. As far as roster payrolls, Trey Turner is a free agent, so that's a big number that's coming off. He's getting paid $21 million this year. Justin Turner, they've got a club option for $16 million. The other thing it's worth pointing out is that does not include arbitration. So Cody Bellinger would be headed to arbitration. Julio Urias would be headed to arbitration. Walker Buehler would be headed to arbitration. Dustin May would enter first year of arbitration. Will Smith, first year of arbitration. Gonsolin, first year of arbitration. Gratterall, first year of arbitration. So $156 million is where they sit now. Again, that's without Bauer. That's without Price. That's without Trey Turner on the books. That also does not account for some some big, like Cody Bellinger, for example, that arbitration number could easily be $20 million, right around what Trey Turner was this year. So it's not to say that the Dodgers are going to have tons and tons of cash to spend, but there definitely is a little bit more breathing room. Let's get back to some more comments and more questions. Raymond asks, what are your thoughts on how the Dodgers could use that money? Again, I think it opens up the possibilities this year. I don't know if the Dodgers wanted to go any higher in the payroll department just based on where the thresholds are. This drops them down at least one, maybe two. I'd have to check. We're kind of doing this on the fly. As far as penalty thresholds, it drops them down a little bit. But now if there's a guy out there who's got like an $18-19 million salary or something like that, and the Dodgers wanted to go get them at the trade deadline, pay half that, take that on their books in exchange for some prospects, I think they could. I think there's a little more flexibility. But I think, I'll say this again, I think the biggest impact will be next year. Now, do they want to sign Trey Turner? We'll see. Do they want to, go after a starting pitcher or something? We'll see. But I think they have flexibility next offseason because of that. Sherry asks, are the Dodgers off the hook for any of the remaining wages to Bauer? The answer is yes. If he is suspended, that is suspended without pay, and that money comes off of the luxury tax implications there. So that's the note on that one. And people are asking about time served. They have said because the commissioner's exempt list was paid and because it was an agreement between the players and the Players Association, he does not get credit for a year served. So he's been out, like I said, since July 1st. So what's that, 10 months, 11 months? That does not count. So it's 11 months on the commissioner's exempt list and then 2 years on top of that. So almost 3 years that he will be out of baseball if his appeal, which he has announced he is making, is not go through. Let's get to a couple more comments and questions here. Old Ben, this is sad. Trevor doesn't deserve that. Lots of free Trevor Bauer stuff, which is not surprising here. Ira says, punishment way too harsh, but it's time to extend Trey. People are not Rob Manfred fans in the chat here. Let's see. What about this year? Sorry if the volume is high. We'll turn it down on our end. The Dodgers, Matt, the Dodgers need a starting pitcher. They need to sign Trey Turner. I mean, I think this is the interesting piece of it. Like, we could talk about all the off-field stuff. Obviously, Trevor Bauer, former Cy Young Award winner. If you look at his numbers, even when he was with the Dodgers last year, 2.59 ERA in 17 starts, obviously averaging more than 6 innings per outing. Fielding independent pitching, FIP, that wasn't great, but 1.8 wins above replacement in half of a season. That's really good for a starting pitcher. The caveat to all that is I actually don't think this hurts the Dodgers from a starting pitching perspective, and here's what I mean. I think the Dodgers were under the assumption and were planning for this contingency. I think you look at the roster as it's constructed now. You've got Buehler, you've got Urias, you've got Kershaw as your top three. That's an elite top three. Those are three guys, especially the way Kershaw is pitching right now. Those are three guys that are top 15, 20, 25 pitchers in all of baseball, depending on what you think about Kershaw at this stage. But I think Buehler's probably top 5 to 10. Urias belongs in the top 7 to 12 conversation, and then I think Kershaw probably in the 10 to 20 conversation. Behind them, you've got Andrew Heaney, who, yes, he's on the injured list, but we saw some flashes of maybe the Dodgers unlock stuff. Dave Roberts said they expect him back sooner rather than later. You've got Tony Gonsolin, who by and large has been okay. He's been good enough. Tyler Anderson, I would throw into the same bucket, has been good enough. I say it all the time. If these guys, you're only looking for 5 innings pitched and then to hand it over the bullpen, if they have a 4.5 ERA, that's 2 to 3 earned runs per start. If you can get Gonsolin for 5 innings and 2 to 3 runs, Anderson for 5 innings and 2 to 3 runs, with the offense and bullpen the way that they are constructed, you would be fine there. Let's also note, you've got guys like Dustin May, who's due back at some point after the All-Star break. Things seem to be going well, if not a little bit ahead of schedule, so maybe he is built up, something we didn't expect. Maybe he is built up and ready to pitch as a starting pitcher this year. That's something to keep an eye on. And then you've got prospects. Could Bobby Miller be productive at some point this year? Could Ryan Pepio, who we had on the show a couple of weeks, could he be somebody that can contribute? Mitch White has looked good in various starts. Andre Jackson is a guy on the 40-man roster. Michael Grove, another guy we had on the show who's looked really good down at AA this year and is already on the 40-man roster. And so I actually don't think this forces the Dodgers' hand from a pitching perspective. It wouldn't surprise me if they went out and got a guy like Luis Castillo, a name that we've mentioned before, from a Reds team that's been really bad. Do they try and acquire somebody like that at the deadline? Possibly, but I just don't think that like tomorrow the Dodgers are going to make some dramatic move now because this is official and it's off their books. I think pitching-wise, I think they're good enough. I think the bullpen has been elite, and I think you just trust the offense and lean on the offense most of all. Because keep in mind, if you're talking about a playoff series, do you really want to go spend money on a fourth starter? how often do you use a fourth starter in a playoff series? In a 5-game series, you're probably not using one, maybe once. In a 7-game series, probably once. And so, yes, maybe some insurance for Buehler, Urias, and Kershaw, whether they can get through the season healthy. But I'm not quite sure that this forces the Dodgers' hands like, hey, we have to do something right now to go through this. Iris says, only good thing here is that we have more money now. Again, more people not happy about this. People talking about Manfred. Screw Manfred. Screw the Major League Baseball Players Association. And I think that's worth pointing out, by the way. Not to say that the Players Association was on board with this suspension, but the Players Association has been on board with the commissioner's exempt list up until this point. Now, again, the Players Association did not decide this suspension. That's on Manfred. So the people who are frustrated with Manfred, that's the right place to go for. Alex says, Bauer also cost us Scherzer. The Dodgers are hesitant on that 3rd year to Bauer's contract. And that, I think, is totally a great point, Alex. I think it's possible that Bauer did cost the Dodgers a little bit in free agency. My one question would be, they clearly had the money to go get Freddie Freeman, and I don't think at any point they were banking on signing Freddie Freeman. So I think with Scherzer, I'm not quite sure it was apples to apples, Bauer to Scherzer, as much as, just maybe not wanting to go a 3rd year. I think the Scherzer contract's crazy, so whether they had Bauer or not, I would not have been interested in that Scherzer contract personally, but I think it's something interesting and worth pointing out. Gary says Bauer would have been a bonus with what they have already. I think that's a good way of looking at it. Would have been nice to add Trevor Bauer, the pitcher, regardless of what you think of Trevor Bauer, the person. It would have been nice to have him, but I think if the Dodgers were given the option today of pulling the ripcord and saying you can get out of this contract, out of all of the money, and not have to deal with the circus around it, but you lose the player, I'm pretty positive Andrew Friedman and company would have signed up for that. So I'm not saying there's a ton of high fives and fist pumps going on in the Dodger front offices today, but my guess, my prediction, this is just Jeff talking for himself, I'm guessing that there's a little bit of relief that this is over with, that the cap relief is something that is welcomed. And I think the team's looking and saying, hey, we're playing good baseball. Yes, we lost a couple to the Diamondbacks, but overall, we have one of the best records in baseball. We like what we have as a group. And so now we know there's certainty of what we have going forward. Bob asks, is he allowed to play while he appeals? My understanding, my guess, and I could be wrong, I haven't seen this, so if somebody wants to correct me in the chat, please let me know. I don't believe the answer is he can. My guess is even if he were to appeal and if he were to be eligible, then he would remain on the commissioner's exempt list while that appeal was going through, is just my guess. So we'll see. Gilbert says Miller and or Pepio should fill the rotation nicely. Go Blue. Again, those are guys that are extras. The Dodgers have 5 starting pitchers currently healthy. Heaney, again, not expected to be out long. That's number 6. Mitch White, Andre Jackson, 7 and 8. Pepio, Grove, Miller, what's that, 9, 10, and 11? I mean, David Price you could throw into that category, and that doesn't include Dustin May, who's expected back in a few months. So lots of options there. Now the World 138 responding to the Max Scherzer thing. We didn't want Max back. That's possible. Jeffrey points out on Facebook, Bauer gets a 324-game suspension. All the Astro players from 2017, 0-game suspension. There you go. I have nothing to add to that one, Jeff. So good to see you in there, and thanks for watching today. Let's see. How did he not fit in? He was the ace for the first 3 months of last year, commenting on Bauer, whether or not he fit in. I believe maybe he's talking about Scherzer. I think he's talking about Scherzer, so I'll let that one go. Let's see. A couple more here. Guillermo, he has so much legal stuff happening. Maybe he needs 2 years to deal with that. I don't think he would agree with that assessment, but let's see. Matthew, you would think Rob Manfred learned his lesson last season targeting the Braves and then making Manfred look like a clown. So there you go. But again, the headline here, Trevor Bauer suspended 364 games, 2 years. He will miss. That news being broken today by a number of baseball reporters. Apologies, I don't know who got it first. I saw Heyman, Ken Rosenthal, a bunch of people. As Trevor Bauer himself, the source on this one, he will be appealing. He claims to be innocent, and so that's out there. But, as this video goes up, let us know in the comments below. I'm sure that will be lively. But this is big news. Again, has implications for the Dodgers this year, has implications for the Dodgers next year, has implications for Trevor Bauer's career, for his franchise. But if this suspension were to be played out completely and the appeal is not accepted, not upheld, and he has to he will not pitch for the Dodgers again. This suspension goes beyond when his contract would expire. This would take him into the 2024 season. Again, 2 years from today. So April 29th, 2024 would be his first time becoming eligible. He'd be about 33 years old. And who knows? Who knows? He'd be out of baseball for basically 3 years, considering he spent 11 months on the exempt list dating back to July 1st of last year. My name is Jeff Spiegel. We appreciate you joining us, as always. If you're new to our channel watching this, please subscribe, ring the notification bell. We've always got breaking news coverage like this. We do live post-game shows. We'll be going live Saturday night. Clayton Kershaw going for the franchise record strikeout total. We will be live on this channel right as soon as that game ends. Hopefully a Dodger win. Hopefully Kershaw gets the 4 or 5 strikeouts that he needs to break that record. If you're a podcast person, we are on DodgerHeads, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Check us out there. And, of course, Dodger Blue 1958 on social media. And we'll have tons of coverage over on DodgerBlue.com, so be sure to check that out. Again, my name's Jeff Spiegel. This has been DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. We appreciate you joining us. We'll see you Saturday night.